We believe in freedom, freedom cannot last. We believe in freedom.
Ella Josephine Baker was a civil rights organizer and strategist who worked for social justice from 1931 to 1986. While largely unknown to the public, she worked alongside and influenced the actions of prominent civil rights leaders and organizations. She founded and guided the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which adopted her leadership philosophy and became one of the most effective groups of the modern civil rights movement. Ms. Baker's legacy is a generation of activists who used her grassroots leadership methods. Ms. Baker began working for civil rights organizations serving the African American community in 1927. In 1930, she became involved with the Young Negroes Cooperative League, an organization that reflected Ms. Baker's beliefs in group-centered leadership, with young people and women taking key roles in the movement. She described it as servant leadership and shared leadership, rather than having one charismatic leader in charge. In 1931, she was elected to serve as the national director. Ms. Baker never tried to be the focal point of any of the groups with which she worked. She used her skills as an effective communicator and organizer to create a significant force within the civil rights movement.
My ego wasn't at stake at any point, and I had found a greater sense of importance by being a part of those who were growing.
Ms. Baker believed that activism was only effective if it involved ordinary people fighting for their rights. She believed that activism was a process that only worked with time, and that it required ordinary people, not just charismatic leaders, who worked tirelessly to create real change in the world. In 1938, she began working for the NAACP, and by 1943, she became the national director of branches. She encouraged local chapters to focus on specific local issues, from voter registration to public transportation, and to involve their communities to create change. She stepped down from the NAACP in 1946 because she wanted to focus on community organizing rather than legal action, which was a key part of the NAACP's strategies. After the successful Montgomery bus boycott in 1957, she worked alongside Bayard Rustin and Stanley Levinson to form the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, with the goal of creating an organizing base for Dr. Martin Luther King. Ms. Baker moved to Atlanta to become the executive secretary of the SCLC, their first employee. Her work behind the scenes allowed Dr. King to move from one place to the next, mobilizing people through mass meetings. Ms. Baker's idea of leadership, however, caused conflict between her and the organization's leaders, African American ministers, who believed in the top-down approach. Ms. Baker also disagreed with SCLC's focus on highly publicized events instead of developing long-lasting, community-based organizations. She felt that no lasting change would be achieved through demonstrations alone. There needed to be more emphasis on ongoing support systems for local organizations. In 1960, starting in Greensboro, North Carolina, Black college students began sit-in protests at white-only lunch counters. The nonviolent protests spread across the South, with students participating in 13 states and by the fall of 1960, in over 80 cities. As the sit-ins were not coordinated by a larger organization, the attention it gained around the country caused the SCLC to consider adding a student branch. Ms. Baker, however, believed that the students running the sit-ins should decide the direction of the movement themselves, rather than be controlled by SCLC leaders. She organized a conference for the leaders of the student movement. The speakers included Ms. Baker, Dr. King, and Jim Lawson from the Congress of Racial Equality. Ms. Baker's speech encouraged the students to look to themselves and nobody else as the main catalysts for change in the civil rights movement. From this meeting and separate planning sessions during the conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, was founded as an organization with group-centered leadership and collective decision-making. Unlike leader-centered groups like SCLC, SNCC did not revolve around one well-known figure. Instead, members worked together to organize, seeing themselves as catalysts in building local movements. Ms. Baker soon left the SCLC to focus full-time on SNCC, where she supported the students by helping them build the skills they needed to organize effectively, such as the training of local leaders.
Because they knew that the meeting came into being because I did it. But they also saw that I made no effort to become a leading figure in the meetings. And so they began to have that kind of confidence. And so they felt they could trust me to maybe further the matter of their independence.
Touches me most is that I had a chance to work.
As chief advisor until 1964, Ms. Baker encouraged SNCC to develop community groups that would help organize protests and campaigns. She guided their decision-making and worked to keep the nonviolent focus of the organization.
She was just the kind of person that you wanted to emulate, you wanted to be like, you wanted to follow her. And she was a very low-key person. Didn't say do this, do this, do this. Didn't say that at all. But would sort of almost lead by asking questions. What do you think would happen if you did this? Have you thought about what might happen if you did this? And so she led in that fashion.
By 1961, SNCC had two main campaigns, one in Georgia and the other in Mississippi, both working for voting rights. SNCC attracted hundreds of white students from northern states to help with voter registration projects. SNCC also helped to develop the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party in April of 1964 as part of their voter registration project for African Americans in Mississippi. Though their goals and ideas were different, SCLC and SNCC worked alongside each other and were both critical in the success of the movement. From SNCC came a new generation of lifelong civil rights leaders, including Diane Nash, John Lewis, and Julian Bond, who used grassroots organizing and local support to carry out their work. Bob Moses, a lead organizer with SNCC's voter registration campaign, started the Algebra Project, a nonprofit that works to ensure quality public school education for every child in America through the building of coalitions. This project is based on the organizational philosophies that Ms. Baker brought to SNCC. Hollis Watkins of SNCC is now the president of Southern Echo, an organization that is working to develop effective, accountable grassroots leadership in African American communities in rural Mississippi and the surrounding region through comprehensive training and technical assistance programs. He says that this mission is firmly based on Baker's leadership with SNCC.
I think it's fair to say that without her leadership and her style of leadership, we would not have been the organization that we turned out to be. Her work with other organizations years earlier, like the NAACP, made it the long-lasting organization it has turned out to be. And the organizational style that she brought to things, that's what people are going to remember about her. So she has a present-day effect on civil rights activity.
A lot of the uprisings that are happening right now are led by young people, and that has everything to do with the way that she put young folks front and center in making their own destiny. And it's also very clear that something like the Black Lives Matter movement or what's been happening specifically in Ferguson quite often has been led or conceived of by women. I think that type of perspective and legacy is very much with us today.
Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, becomes as important to the rest of the country as the killing of a white mother's son. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until this happens.
By modeling, teaching, and writing about group-centered leadership, Ms. Baker guided the students of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to become community organizers in their own right. Ella Baker's behind-the-scenes leadership stemmed from her belief that the potential to transform the world was through collective action, not the actions of one person. Though she was not a household name outside of the civil rights movement, Ella Baker has had a significant impact on grassroots political organizing today.